So we heard a bit kind of from the inside of government, and now we're going to hear from some projects that are outside of government. So these are projects building in the space, but they're related to things like identity and gig work, and basically just getting open source funded and everybody just joining the public good in the public space. So these are projects from the space that are contributing to that, but they're, as I mentioned, they're outside sort of the inner sanctum of government. So it's good that we kind of represent both sides here at ETHDenver. So coming up to the stage again is Thad as our moderator. And I'm going to welcome John from ShapeShift, Adam Dill from Opolis, Paul Quigley from Liberado, Angie Gallagher from BurstIQ, Dani Osorio from Near Protocol, and the one and only Kevin Owocki from Gitcoin. Oh boy. Okay, I'm going to duck out now and let you take over.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for being present for us. Angie, I love your glasses today.
Yeah,
you're like
happy to be here.
Great to see you all. Let's see. So today we're going to talk about the business edition of the ColoradoJam. And there were some questions earlier about what Colorado companies are doing in the blockchain space. And so, from my perspective, working for the state, I know that in the past 3 or 4 years, we've been pushing some legislation to get blockchain a little bit more on the front burner in the public sector, and to encourage blockchain technology development and innovation, certainly in the private sector, in order to sort of realize Governor's dream of creating a real locus of blockchain innovation within the state of Colorado. So we've got some great guests this afternoon representing a big cross-section of businesses that have been ideating and building and using blockchain-based tools within their organizations. And I'd like you each to give a quick introduction to yourself and your organization, and then we can dive into some conversations. John, do you want to talk about ShapeShift first?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. So I'm John, the co-founder and chief product officer at ShapeShift. ShapeShift has been in the crypto space for quite a while now. We were founded in 2014, originally as a kind of crypto-to-crypto digital asset exchange. And we've really evolved from there now to be a full-featured self-custodial wallet platform, also interacting with the Web3 wallet. We also acquired Portis last year, which is part of our big involvement here at ETHDenver, which is a Web3 wallet and SDK provider. And yeah, happy to be here.
Thanks, John. Adam?
Hey, I'm Adam. I'm a technology steward at Opolis, and we provide benefits for contractors, self-sovereign employees, and gig workers. We really try to be the kind of bridge between the Web 2 world and the Web 3 world for all these individuals who need to do things like tax compliance and get health insurance and other benefits like that. So we focus a whole lot on making sure people stay legal and compliant, and make sure all their data stays private and safe, and make sure they can get their payrolls paid on time and their health insurance paid for, that kind of stuff. And we're fully digitally crypto native, so you can get paid and pay in crypto, and pay for your insurance in crypto, that kind of stuff. And yeah, we handle all taxes and withholding and all that fun stuff too.
Right on. Angie, tell us about Burst. Oh, unmute.
Hey, we're based in Denver, Colorado, and Burst came together 2015. The co-founders are Frank Ricotta and Brian Jackson. And our blockchain is built from scratch, but it layers very nicely. And the end goal here is we are for healthcare data. So we have HIPAA compliance and GDPR compliance. And I oversee the community, which is a global community in which developers can go in and play with our APIs. But definitely a lot of features around digital profiling. I saw that last panel talking about the consent of data. And ultimately, that's what our chain can do is, basically consent a lot of highly secure data, specifically in healthcare.
Excellent. Dani.
Hey, everyone. I'm with the developer relations team over at Near Protocol. And we are a layer 1 blockchain based on a proof of stake and sharding that also interoperates with Ethereum. So we just launched a grants fund that's designed to fund open source software and moved into a fully decentralized workforce. And we're seeing a lot of interesting movements come through. So really excited to be here. I remember this is my 4th ETHDenver. I remember the first one as things were getting organized and we were packing gift bags in a warehouse the night before, and just really excited to be back in this virtual version.
Right on. Thanks. Paul.
Sure. Paul Quigley. I've been in the blockchain space since 2012. I had no gray hair at that time. And actually I had the great opportunity of working under Governor Hickenlooper as part of the blockchain task force, which brought the money license and the digital asset legislation into the state. So all of the things that we're working with in terms of digital assets and the legal regulatory framework was part of the work of a big group of people, equally committed, crazy zealots. What we're doing is we are actually building a digital asset custody platform, which is, for people who are unfamiliar with it, basically it's a digital vault, similar to the way people would have stored money or gold, but it's under your control. So it's designed for cryptocurrency and digital assets. We're going through the regulatory process right now. We're building, we're working on bank partners. Our target markets are DeFi, banks, and merchants. Happy to be here. Happy to, we are hiring people, so we can talk about that later, I think. And we are totally decentralized. Our model originally had a small finance and customer service function prior to COVID. And then once COVID hit, we distributed that as well. So we're all over the country in terms of our resources. Happy to be here.
Right on. Thanks, Paul. Kevin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Kevin Owocki. I'm the founder of Gitcoin, which is a project that allows you to get coins in exchange for doing software development work. We have funded $11 million worth of software development in the Ethereum space. And I love open source. I love public goods. I love Colorado. And I'm happy to be here.
Right on. Thanks, guys. So great group. We're basically here to talk today about we're here to pump Colorado a little bit and talk about what the opportunities are, and even equally important, I think, talk about what maybe the roadblocks are in terms of how the state can help your business, whether you feel like there's missing legislation that could make your lives easier, that could create more jobs, create more opportunities. Also, what kinds of skill sets do you see that we've got plenty of in the state? What kind of skill sets do we need to be teaching our future developers and our future product owners and our future digital marketers in order to help support this new Web3 Internet 5.0 ecosystem that we all really, really love and want to see succeed? So I think probably with that, I think, Kevin has got his eyes on quite a few different projects that have been going on, obviously creating a tremendous amount of funding. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I guess Joe Lubin's 2019 DevCon talk comes to mind for me when we started talking about this. I think the quote from his talk was, "It's not about a killer app, it's about a killer ecosystem." And one of the things I think is super cool about the blockchain space is that you can walk into a hackathon and there's so much open source software available that you can create something that would have taken a bank 5 years ago $10 million and 200 people in order to do, and you can just pull it down from GitHub. And that's the really cool thing about innovation in the blockchain space. And, the killer ecosystem in Colorado is Opolis, it's Near Protocol, it's all of the calls, it's all of the projects on this call. And so I think it's about a killer ecosystem. And I'm just excited to see the innovation continue to grow exponentially.
Right on. And I think that's a great point about open source, and it's, there's so much you can do with it off the shelf. It's definitely a little bit of an uphill climb when you're trying to convince your coworkers who are used to enterprise licensed software solutions what the support mechanism is for those solutions. But the argument is certainly there, and certainly within state technology, we're seeing more of an opening in order to be able to implement open source solutions and look at alternative licensing models that don't involve the traditional methods. So yeah, Paul, what do you think? Oh, you're muted, buddy.
So you asked us like 5 questions. What would you like to start with?
Pick and choose, Paul. I know you've got something you want to talk about.
I think for us, it's the ecosystem is incredibly enthusiastic and engaged. I think for us, what's happened is we've looked at a number of different things, and the digital asset custody platform kind of was an evolution around having the appropriate regulatory and legislative pieces in place. I think for us now, it's development on the front end. We certainly need front end developers. Our platform is built on an API framework, and our initial market is domestic. But what we're finding is we're getting an awful lot of pull, which is a really good message for Colorado internationally. So we're having correspondent banking relationships. That's a new thing for a lot of folks. So the fact that you can move your assets internationally under KYC AML, back to your earlier, the session before this, when you were talking about identity, a lot of the efficiencies you guys are putting in place for KYC will help, because part of our platform is using AI, and we're looking at patterns, and we're looking at cybersecurity patterns 24/7 because the markets never close. So there's a lot of infrastructure here. I would welcome anyone who's looking at building coming into Colorado. Was one of the things that I'm finding so exciting about the ecosystem. I think that and the fact that you can work remote, I mean, COVID's accelerated that, but we can work remote and get a lot of things done and still live here. I think it's just phenomenal. I'm happy to answer. Are there any other questions?
That's awesome. I think that we all miss the good old days of having meetups, blockchain related meetups in person. There's a strong community here, and it's it exists online now, and it'll exist back in person here, hopefully in the not too distant future.
Yeah.
Let's see. So move along to John. You want to talk a little bit about what you're seeing in the space, what you're seeing?
Sure.
Yeah.
So back when ShapeShift was founded in kind of early 2014, I feel like we were one of the only crypto companies at that time in Colorado. And it's been really great to see so many projects since that time, especially in the 2014 to 2017 timeline, and since pop up and start planting roots here. We've worked with and helped a lot of those projects, and we love being part of that community. And I think it's really great to see that develop. I think Colorado has been relatively friendly to these projects, and I want to see that keep being the case. I mean, I really want to see Colorado lead that front. And be one of the leaders in the entire country, if not the world, in terms of welcoming open source and decentralized projects in particular, to really get these people to come here. And I think we've honestly got a good amount to learn even from our neighbors to the north in Wyoming, who have been very progressive on this front in relation to crypto asset banking and how they deal with money transmission and even their state level securities laws. And I would like to see Colorado, follow some of that lead and even go beyond it, to, maybe even to the point of having, a sort of regulatory sandbox, especially when it comes to things like DEXs and decentralized protocols and a lot of the things that Gitcoin and Kevin are helping fund. A lot of those projects kind of break the mold of what a traditional company, quote unquote, even is. A lot of the most interesting projects in the space are not companies. They're protocols. They're decentralized applications. They're things that don't fit cleanly into any of these regulatory boxes. And I want to see Colorado be very welcoming to that and let this, basically this experimentation happen. I mean, the best way to lead on that is to allow for that innovation. Don't have a strict regulatory hammer. And I think Colorado's been good about this, and we're lucky to have Governor Opolis, who's very progressive and understanding on these aspects on this front. And we just really need to lean into that. I think Colorado could become, one of the leading places in the world to launch your project. Part of that is there is a tension, obviously, with the federal laws, and we can only do so much on a state level. But I think we should be looking to Wyoming as an example. And, I know a lot of people in Colorado never want to be behind Wyoming on anything anyway. So we should find a way to at least match that and go beyond it, and really, really be welcoming to these, kind of unorthodox projects, because I really think that they are the wave of the future.
Yeah, and I think that's certainly, these are waters that Colorado state government has been wading through before, in terms of certainly breaking ground on the legalization of marijuana, something that still today is not legal at the federal level, but we've figured out a pretty good framework and path forward towards letting that industry blossom within the state. And I certainly am hoping that we can do the same. It's really far outside the box, a lot of the things that these decentralized protocols are doing, and the way that people get compensated for them, and the way that then the states and the federal government collect taxes for them is something that Opolis is on top of. Adam, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll answer a different question first. I think something special about Colorado is the culture that's built up here. We have this real good history of both a rugged individualism on the western part of the state and this really strong collectivism on the eastern parts of the state, on the front slope. And I think that's a very special mix that we have here in Colorado that we don't have in other places. And generally we all get along pretty well around it, right? So you can see this really heavily in the crypto world as well. And our inherent culture that Colorado has really well supports that. And I think that's something very special that most other places, or I don't know if anywhere else has, that Colorado has. And it's really good to see the government, the state government coming in and supporting. And like John said, it's good to see our neighbors to the north in Wyoming pushing legislation further there. I would love to see that as well done here, and similar stuff done here. But yeah, Colorado's in a really special spot, got a really good culture and a really good way to support it. And we have an amazing tech scene here, obviously. And the tech scene goes well beyond just development, right? Like we've got we don't just have software developers, but we have project managers, we have people with great experience scaling tech products, both from a marketing perspective and a technology perspective. So I really like what's going on in Colorado, and I feel like we've got a really special mix of people and talent here that isn't available to other communities. And I think that's really at the heart of what Colorado can push forward, is that culture.
I think that's a great point to make, Adam, and I would sort of echo that. Within within our state government, our elected representatives from throughout the counties, whether they're on the western slope or the eastern slope, are open to and listen to those sorts of new ideas that can help their constituents. And certainly I've been in some committee sessions within the state legislature to explain what blockchain is and how it deals with transactions and how that might be impactful for things like water law. There are so many opportunities within what the state government regulates where blockchain could potentially have a big impact. It's really a matter of understanding and explaining what that impact can be, both from an economic perspective and from just a pure, people's perspective. So
yeah, absolutely.
Excellent.
And John made a good point too about putting upward pressure on the federal government to get our federal laws in line. And I think Colorado shows a lot of good leadership, and the Western states in general could show a lot of good leadership in that area and push the federal government forward in the direction that we need to go.
Yeah, I think that's right. I've certainly seen interest from the Western States Governors Council around blockchain, and I know that Colorado is certainly not the only state who's thinking about these issues and knows that there's some definite future potential for our people in our state. So great, Angie. You look like you might have something on your mind.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, I want to say big shout out to everybody in comments. I'm seeing some names that I recognize, and I was thinking, Thad, that before COVID, the community that we have here in Colorado, again, sort of highlighting of what a great place this is to be. And then when it comes to our neighbors up in Wyoming, I went up and volunteered at that amazing hackathon that they have. And really, I mean, prior to COVID, we were all a little bit more connected. Even Kevin, I went up to Boulder and have lunch with him, and we had a lot of discussions of how can we continue working with each other and, strengthening the community that we have in Colorado, and even with ETHDenver and Opolis and all these entities here. And then COVID happened, and we kind of went our own separate ways in so many different forms, because we're just trying to pull the ship together, if you know what I mean. And so what I'm hoping that would come out of this is that reconnecting with some of you, and then also John, would love to connect with you at ShapeShift as well. My question would be is how can we continue to come back together, as Coloradoans? And Dani, I think, are you in San Francisco? I think you guys are based out there, right?
Our headquarters is in San Francisco. I'm in Denver.
Yeah, well, but even whether Colorado-based or not, what I love about the blockchain community is this sense of collaboration, right? And how we can, the technology is set up to do it so seamlessly and so quickly with that trust factor. So I think that you had also thrown out another question in terms of, I remember when you had come to our office at BurstIQ talking about the future of Colorado. How do we equip, the future students and the college students and the undergrads? How do we wrap them into the fold of this new technology and help them continue moving forward as well? And I don't know, I think if we can kind of get back to that joining forces prior to COVID, working together, we can tackle some of that as well. I see Taylor in the comments out there, woo-woo, taking design. I know that's a passion of his, is the education part of blockchain and the future of Colorado. So that's where my mind is right now.
Right on, absolutely, absolutely. Looking forward to everybody getting shots in their arms and getting back out there. Dani, let's hear from Near Protocol for a little while.
All right. So Colorado is awesome for a lot of reasons, but here are a few. I think that governments can choose to, stick their heads in the sand and avoid all sorts of things that are different or new or maybe a little hard to understand, or they can dive in and really learn about technology and empower that technology and be on the cutting edge. And I'm really excited to see Colorado taking those strides. Governor Opolis has been really leading the forefront with his office in terms of doing this. Little known fact, but one of the earliest general counsels for the Ethereum Foundation is now the Securities Commissioner for Colorado. So that really makes it, it really makes it clear to blockchain companies that Colorado is welcoming, that it is focused on innovation and technology, and that they are creating a sandbox for these companies to thrive and explore in. The second part is that the advent of remote work, not just for the companies that had that before, but companies who are going to continue this as it goes. Near Protocol is an example of that. Everyone was based in San Francisco for a while, then they decided people were going to go remote, then the pandemic hit, and then it just accelerated everything really, really fast. And now we're remote forever. And that takes power back to people to make their own decisions about where they want to live. And I think that Colorado, places like Denver and Boulder and all the areas around have a really, really high quality of life for people who want some fresh air, who want nature, who want more space, who want to still have a technology hub. So maybe not being completely isolated, but having that option to flow back and forth. And then the third thing would be that, so we just launched our pilot grants program. We're going to disperse $1 million in the next 6 months into open source software and projects. And we hope that a lot of that will actually come from Colorado interested companies, the ColoradoJam program we've been talking about with the governor's office. It really comes down to giving these organizations and these people and these grantees a place that they could potentially anchor towards. And so something you asked earlier was like, what are some of the regulatory issues you've come across? And so we've seen a lot of interesting grants projects who like to identify themselves as DAOs, which are decentralized autonomous organizations. And the legal teams are always telling them, well, that's nice that you want to run this through a DAO, but you're going to need a real company behind it that isn't some sort of, pre-existing structure to be the backer of the DAO from which the DAO executes. And so it'd be really interesting to see the state of Colorado delve into this and say, well, what could be some structures that were compatible with how these DAOs are being formed? And I think that could be a really cool thing. But yeah, to all the projects who are considering being around here, who are interested in building alongside ColoradoJam, we invite you to apply to our grants program. It's just smear.org/grants. And we're really excited to see all the projects that are playing in the open source space and public goods.
That's awesome, Dani. I think that your input would have been greatly appreciated on the Blockchain Council a few years ago. We did not get around to talking about DAOs and what that means in terms of a actual business organization or any of those things. And I think that those are all super important to address. And there's another legislative session coming up starting next January that we might be able to talk about getting some of those ideas into, because they're certainly important. And the other thing that you talked about that I would like to at least get a little bit of input on is, I know that for the most part, our Colorado companies have been pretty comfortable using remote talent for quite some time, and so I think the switch over to this post-COVID world wasn't as dramatic as that for those in our industry as it may have been for quite a few others. But moving forward, how does that look? Do things become even more decentralized? Do you look at recruiting your workforce from the realm of digital nomads, or are you still focusing on Colorado-based networks, people who know people? We've got a pretty solid 20+ year tradition of digital product development within the state. We've got a lot of great traditional Web 2.0 developers out there. We've got great mobile developers out there. Moving those folks over and onboarding them into the rabbit hole of blockchain is not a super heavy lift for those who are interested in doing so. So are you guys looking primarily from the development side, recruiting blockchain expertise from outside, or are you looking at growing your teams from inside the state? John, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this has always been a topic of debate ever since we started hiring, engineers, product managers, marketing folk, anyone that might touch any of these things. I would say historically, like you kind of always have to focus on the primary skill set you're looking for. Like, it's much easier to teach a good software engineer about blockchain-based protocols than it is to teach them software engineering. And the same kind of goes for most of these things. And early on, you didn't really have a choice because there were so few people that had experience in this space. That's changing a little bit now. I think after 2017 and everything since then, a lot of people building, it's become a lot more popular, and there are people that have gotten experience in the space. I would say that we still generally hire, though, with the primary skill set first, and then we are always making sure to look that they're actually interested in crypto. If they aren't, they usually aren't going to last long because the space is just too crazy if you don't have a real passion for it. So we want to make sure that they're at least interested to learn more about it. And if we find people that already have experience in the space, that's just a huge bonus. And that certainly, it certainly is a competitive advantage if you're applying for these type of jobs and you've already worked at another crypto company. But it's by no means necessary. If you're interested in getting in the space, I would definitely, look for companies or projects hiring, like even open source protocols that are putting up bounties, like what Kevin does with Gitcoin is great. And actually, that's also a great thing, is that you don't necessarily need company level experience. If you've even contributed to open source protocols in the space, that's great experience that we're super interested in. So ultimately, we always look for the primary skill first. That's the most important thing. And we want to make sure they're interested, and then we will teach them the crypto side if necessary. But you will be ahead of the game if you've already got that crypto experience.
Yeah, for sure. And Adam, from your perspective at Opolis, what's the landscape looking like?
So I think the answer is kind of both, right? Like we look at location second, but if we can find somebody who fits who can fulfill the job role and they're semi-local or commutable, like even now in COVID, like our latest hire starts in a couple weeks out of Denver Metro, right? Like this is great because we're looking through a post-COVID era at some point. We'd like to be able to get everybody around a table as much as reasonable. But that being said, we have people in like 12 states. Like we have people. I'm guessing here, but a lot, and multiple countries as well. So we really look for people who are motivated first, and if we can find those motivated people and are willing to dig in and learn and have that primary skill set, like John was saying, then like location's not as big a deal to us. We were fully remote before COVID, so like now being fully remote's not much difference to us. It just means we don't have a central office we can go into as easily, but we will again one day. And for everybody that can get there easily, that's just bonus points. And we'd love to work with other people locally whenever possible.
Right on. Well, I know that a lot of economic analysts look towards sites like Monster and Dice for their employment numbers and recruiting numbers, hoping the same is going to be happening in the not too distant future with Web3 and Opolis.
Yeah,
for sure.
we certainly think we can help bridge that gap.
Yeah. Let's see. What next to discuss? I think we could probably talk a little bit about what you guys are all seeing from the past 6 months or so, as people have gotten used to being in this pandemic, and where productivity has gone, and where ideas have been being generated from that revolve around blockchain. Because I know that this was a big pivot for a lot of folks in terms of how they not only how they did business, but what business they did, right? Certainly my job within the state pivoted dramatically from being primarily focused on blockchain to ensuring that our mobile exposure notifications were working, and that as a state we were leading that effort and getting people who had opted in notified. And so I feel like probably each of us has had to pivot to one degree or another, and seen some new ideas bubble up within the technosphere, certainly around blockchain. Kevin, have you seen anything new in your world? Best ideas, something that is going to be going forward, changing the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's that whole thing about like the slingshot between building infrastructure and building DApps. I think that we're sort of going to go back and forth between building infrastructure and then building DApps that are on top of that infrastructure. And so I would like to see actual consumer-facing applications that are built on top of the infrastructure, and then you get that mass adoption, which is what's going to change the world. But if you ask me what infrastructure I'm really excited about from a technology perspective, it would definitely have to be actually scaling Ethereum with ETH2 and with rollup technology. Gitcoin integrated rollups into Gitcoin grants this last summer, and I wish that other DApps had done that, because I think that L2 is the future of scaling transactions. And there's some interesting stuff that Near and Matic and others are doing with scaling as well. Long term, I'm really excited about homomorphic encryption, which is a way of encrypting data such that the service provider can't see your data, but you and other people that you authorize can see your data. But I think that's probably like 5 years out, something like that. But that's what I'm excited about.
Right on. Dani.
Awesome. Yeah. So what we're seeing now is a sort of a trend that's coming through is that with the freedom to work from anywhere, people get to pick their own place. And then since people are inherently social creatures, we tend to huddle around like minds. So it's really nice to have kind of like a beacon in place that says like there will be innovation related to blockchain here. And that definitely, like, I'm a New York transplant, right? And I think there's a lot of other people who sort of like, see the bat signal and like head towards that location. And hopefully, once the vaccine process has gone a little bit further, there'll be like a really like even greater and thriving community here. I think in terms of innovation, as Kevin mentioned, we're really going down the route of accessibility. So what's super cool about how we've kind of crafted this onboarding process from here is that you just need to be able to code in JavaScript, which is like the most widely known language in the world for as far as programming goes. It's actually pretty easy to pick up. You want to go a little bit deeper and be more hardcore about it, you can go into Rust. But really, you can be working on the front end side. You can work on the full blockchain sort of stack using just JavaScript. You don't have to relearn anything, which makes it really easy to upskill a lot of talent that's already working on other parts of the technology ecosystem. And then from there, making that accessibility layer also available to, as Kevin mentioned, regular people who want to use these applications. I think it's going to come down to what applications can capture real world value. So something we've seen really thrive on here are NFTs, so digital goods sold by artists and creators. We're putting that out there. They mint it for a couple of cents, put up a store for a couple dollars, start selling. They start making real money, even though they're selling digital goods. And there's artists that have reached out to talk about their stories, like on platforms like Mintbase or Peros, where they like start making hundreds of dollars just like as a side income from their usual stuff. And I think when you can get people, like real world people, to start making some real world income and dollars through their activities, then you're creating new value and you're capturing another part of that economy. And I think that's really, really innovative.
Yeah, that's great. I think that you're right on about getting people onboarded by getting them vested, and the best way to vest is definitely money in your pocket. That piques people's interest. Angie, has Burst seen any pivots?
Yeah, absolutely. I saw the panel prior to this about digital identities, and what our blockchain does, which is slightly different than some of the other blockchain world, in that we have to follow HIPAA compliance in order to get that exchange of highly secure data. And, we've been talking in the healthcare field for quite a while of, what can we do about consenting data that if you're with one doctor and then you move to another state and they need tests, blood tests pulled, right? They need to see what had happened to, where were you at 5 years ago? I just recently went through this with testing myself, and they needed to go find the records at a different lab just here in town. So what we're seeing is Frank's passion around profiles and life graphs and a whole person and all the data that is around them. We're seeing a lot more massively accelerated demand around healthcare, because if you have a vaccine, that falls under HIPAA compliance. And now we're talking about passports, so that big corporations, if you have your vaccine and you can prove that, and you have a digital wallet that is your passport that says that you can, then these are things that people are working towards so that we can come back together. Think about graduation for high school or colleges or even proms. If you can prove that you've been vaccinated or that you took a COVID test, but when it comes to HIPAA compliance, that compliance is no joke. And so we're seeing a lot of people coming to us asking more about the chain that we offer because we are HIPAA compliant. So a lot of acceleration there.
I think that's interesting because of the fact that we have faced this national health pandemic. There are a lot of sort of misrepresentations and assumptions about what HIPAA is and what HIPAA isn't. Being able to be very clear about the fact that sending the text message that says, please, if you have tested positive, click here to get your exposure notifications that you opted into, doesn't really fall within that realm, but some other things certainly do. Is super important. And I think that what we're seeing is that there are a good number of startups who have come out of the gate during COVID with solutions that are very specifically pandemic related, and getting the right guardrails in place and understanding that HIPAA is no joke.
Oh gosh, the fines are enormous.
Yeah, is a very important thing.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's what we're looking forward to.
And John, I know that ShapeShift has done some good product innovation, certainly, and I don't think it was necessarily COVID related, but definitely within the past 6 months, ShapeShift has been coming out with some new products, talking about decentralizing the trading platform to a much larger extent than it was before. Can you talk a little bit about what the sort of impetus was behind that, and if
Yeah, so it has very little to do with the pandemic as much as it has to do with us just seeing where we think the puck is going, for lack of a better term.
Yep.
We started as, the ethos of ShapeShift was always non-custodial. Let's empower users to hold their own keys. They might have to trust ShapeShift for a fraction of a second, but we were always trying to minimize or eliminate trust wherever possible. What we've really been watching and have been really impressed with is the development of AMM specifically, automated market makers, things like Uniswap and related products, as well as the whole DeFi ecosystem. A few years ago, it was very nascent and it was just starting to develop and there wasn't much liquidity on those projects. And today, and especially, summer of last year, these things really started to explode to the point where something like Uniswap was doing more volume on a daily basis than Coinbase. So we've been very impressed with that. And we really think that kind of model fits very well into our ecosystem. In many ways, I think, and I've even talked to some of the founders of these projects, they were inspired to start some of these things, from their use of ShapeShift and seeing what we did. And so as we kind of look ahead, we just think that that's really the future of where things are going. And in some ways, these things have been our competitors over the last few years, but we've really decided to embrace that fully, and that we think that the innovation is happening faster than any centralized company can ever keep up with. So we would rather integrate with these decentralized protocols and offer that experience directly to our users. And that has some added benefits of we're no longer in the middle of the trade. There's even less trust than what we originally created. It creates a better UX for the users. And it just, everyone is happier. And we also get the benefit of all of this innovation that's happening in every direction. So it's really kind of turned into a pivot for ShapeShift that our primary goal is no longer going to be trading with customers. We think that there are protocols out there like Uniswap, et cetera, that do that better than we ever can anyway. We would rather integrate directly with these things, promote their innovation, and create a really nice UX for users to use it. Because even to what Kevin was saying earlier, a lot of these things that are being built, even though there are some very basic interfaces to use them, they're basically infrastructure level. And they really require good UX and good applications built on top of them in order to get, mainstream or wide use cases for users to actually use these things. So that's really kind of always been ShapeShift's goal, is make some of this complicated crypto stuff like self-custody and exchange as simple and easy as possible. And so we kind of, we have a lot of experience in that area, and we really want to lean into that kind of product UX side of our company and do that to bring these kinds of decentralized exchanges and DeFi products and all these various protocols being developed and make them super easy for users to reap the benefits of these and interact with them directly. So that's been our focus. And yeah, we just launched this DEX integration back in January. We've gotten a great reception, both in terms of use people coming in to use the app and just, the media and the crypto community. So that definitely, we think that's the future. And at ShapeShift, we're always trying to build to where the future will be, not where it is right now.
Hard to keep up. Thanks for that, John. That definitely gives some insight. And we are almost up on time. Paul, I'm gonna open it up for one quick last word from you. And it looks like John is coming in.
Yeah, so it's interesting how John describes that, because what we're doing is an infrastructure build as well, and it's actually for banks, because we recognize that banks aren't going to go away. However, they need to be able to support a customer with digital assets. And so that integration is essential for the customer to be able to provide, be able to bank fiat or digital assets and be able to touch the payment rails. So that's actually what plugs into John. And so I really think that, we talked about, Kevin mentioned infrastructure. I think it's a hole right now in the market, and we need to fill it. And right now we've got the Coinbases and the Anchorages and other custody, but they're really focused on institutional. They're really not working for mass adoption. And we really feel that the custody fitting into the bank model and working with merchants is going to make the experience and adoption much faster. So those are my comments.
Right on, Paul. I think it's a tough time to be starting up, but it's always a tough time to be starting up. So
That's right.
More power to you.
Never easy.
It's interesting you say that, Dad, because when COVID hit, we were actually in a funding model. We were in a funding cycle, and the market dropped out, and people just vaporized. And it took a couple of months of kind of adjusting to what this is to then get back into it. So we lost probably 5 months in the funding cycle with that. So we're back in it. So we're fine with it now. But it was just a really interesting time because a lot of our business model, our operational model, which was already decentralized, had to be even more decentralized, which changes your entire cost structure and your ability to recruit. So
right
all
on.
good, all good.
All right. Well, thank you, wonderful panelists. I loved hearing all of the blockchain praise and the Colorado praise. We're gonna turn
Thanks all.
We're gonna turn back over to Matt.